Before we continue our journey into the Heart Sutra, allow yourself to become fully present. There is nowhere else you need to be for these few moments. The body is already breathing. Sounds are already arising and fading. Thoughts appear and disappear like birds crossing the open sky. There is nothing you need to force and nothing you need to become. The Dharma has never been far away. It has always been as close as this very breath, waiting patiently for a mind that is willing to look deeply. Today we come to one of the most profound teachings in all of Buddhism, a teaching that has inspired great practitioners for more than 2,000 years and yet continues to be misunderstood. It is the teaching of emptiness. Many people hear this word and become uncertain. Some imagine that emptiness means nothing exists. Others fear it means that life has no meaning, that love is an illusion, or that compassion is unnecessary. If this were what the Buddha intended, he would never have spent 45 years walking from village to village, comforting the grieving, guiding those consumed by anger, encouraging those trapped in despair, and patiently teaching the path that leads beyond suffering. The wisdom of emptiness does not deny life. It allows us to see life without the veil of delusion. The Heart Sutra begins by telling us that Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of great compassion, was practicing deeply the perfection of wisdom. Notice those words carefully, practicing deeply. Wisdom did not arise because Avalokiteshvara accumulated beautiful ideas or mastered philosophical arguments. It arose through direct seeing. Looking deeply into experience, he perceived that the 5 aggregates are empty, and because of that realization, he passed beyond suffering. This is a remarkable statement. The world did not suddenly become free from change. Pain did not vanish from human existence. What disappeared was the ignorance that transformed ordinary pain into endless suffering. This is also the invitation the Heart Sutra extends to us. It does not ask us to believe something extraordinary. It simply asks us to look more carefully than we usually do. Most of our lives are lived upon the surface of experience. We see forms, hear sounds, think thoughts, and immediately give them names. We decide whether we like them or dislike them, whether they belong to us or threaten us. Rarely do we pause long enough to ask whether we are seeing clearly. The Buddha never asked us to accept his words out of faith alone. Again and again, he invited his disciples to investigate for themselves. The path begins not with belief, but with careful observation. As you listen now, notice the breath entering the body. Before the mind says, "I am breathing," the breath has already arrived. Listen to the sounds around you. They reach the ear without asking your permission. Feel the contact between your body and the place where you are sitting. Sensation is already present before thought announces, "This is my body." Life is unfolding long before the familiar story of I, me, and mine begins to describe it. This is a small observation, yet within it lies the doorway to profound wisdom. Our habit is to imagine that there is someone standing at the center of experience, directing everything that happens. We feel as though there is a permanent observer hidden somewhere inside the body, someone who owns every thought, every feeling, every success, every failure. Because of this assumption, we spend much of our lives defending that imagined self. We seek praise because it seems to strengthen it. We fear criticism because it seems to weaken it. We cling to possessions because they appear to belong to it. We fear death because we imagine that it will destroy it. Without realizing it, nearly every anxiety grows from this single assumption. The Buddha did not ask us to reject this assumption immediately. Instead, he encouraged us to examine it with honesty and patience. If there truly is an unchanging self, then surely it can be found. We need not rely upon belief, we can simply investigate. Let us begin with the body. From infancy until this very moment, the body has never remained the same. Every cell has changed. The child you once were is nowhere to be found, yet neither has that child entirely disappeared. Growth has continued through an unbroken stream of causes and conditions. If you look at photographs taken throughout your life, you see countless different faces, yet you have always called them me. Which one is the permanent self? Was it the infant, the teenager, the young adult, the older person you are becoming? The body changes continuously, like a river flowing toward the sea. We may give the river a single name, yet the water never stops moving. Now look at feelings. Throughout this very day, pleasant feelings have arisen and passed away. Unpleasant feelings have appeared and vanished. Neutral feelings have quietly come and gone, often without being noticed. If feelings constantly change, can they truly be who we are? If happiness were the self, what happens when sadness appears? If sadness were the self, how could joy ever return? Feelings visit us much like changing weather. A cloudy morning does not become the permanent climate of the earth. In the same way, no feeling remains long enough to become our identity. Look next at perception. We recognize faces, remember names, distinguish colors, identify sounds, and interpret the world through countless perceptions. Yet these too continually shift. Something that once frightened us may later become familiar. Someone we once disliked may become a dear friend. What we considered failure may eventually reveal itself as an unexpected blessing. Perception changes because understanding changes. It cannot be a fixed self. Then there are thoughts. Sit quietly for only a single minute and watch the mind. Thoughts appear one after another without invitation. Some are joyful, some anxious, some wise, some foolish. Before one thought has fully disappeared, another has already arrived. Did you know exactly what your next thought would be before it appeared? Could you prevent it from arising? Can you keep it from disappearing? Thoughts resemble clouds drifting across an open sky. Some are dark with rain, others are light and beautiful, yet none remain. If thoughts continually come and go, how could they be the permanent owner of experience? Finally, observe consciousness itself. Seeing depends upon the eye and visible form. Hearing depends upon the ear and sound. Thinking depends upon mental objects. Consciousness does not stand alone. It arises together with conditions. Remove the conditions, and that particular consciousness no longer appears. In the early discourses, the Buddha repeatedly pointed to this dependent arising. Nothing exists independently. Everything participates in everything else. This understanding becomes even clearer when we look at something very ordinary. Imagine a clay cup resting on a table. At first glance, it seems completely independent. We simply call it a cup. But look more deeply. The cup depends upon clay, and the clay depends upon the earth. It depends upon rain that softened the soil, sunlight that nourished the plants covering that earth, miners who gathered the clay, potters who shaped it, fire that hardened it, the hands that carried it, and the countless conditions that made each of those possible. Remove enough conditions, and where is the cup? The name remains useful, but the independent object we imagined cannot be found. The same is true of ourselves. We exist because of parents, grandparents, food, water, air, language, culture, teachers, friends, strangers, the earth beneath our feet, and countless beings we shall never meet. Even the breath you are taking now was breathed by trees only moments before. Every inhalation is a silent conversation with the forests of the world. Every meal carries within it the labor of innumerable people. Every moment of your existence reveals an intimacy with all life that the thinking mind rarely notices. When this is seen deeply, the walls we have built between ourselves and the world begin to soften. We no longer stand outside life looking in. We discover that we have always belonged to this vast web of causes and conditions. The separate self we work so hard to defend begins to appear less solid than we once believed. Do not hurry to agree with these words. Agreement is not wisdom. Disagreement is not wisdom either. Simply continue looking. The Buddha never asked anyone to replace one belief with another. He invited us to become intimate with our own experience. If we look with sincerity, patience, and humility, reality gradually reveals itself. Perhaps now a question quietly begins to arise within the mind. If nothing possesses an independent existence, if everything depends upon conditions, then what does the Heart Sutra truly mean when it says, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form"? These words have puzzled practitioners for centuries, yet they are not asking us to solve a philosophical puzzle. They are inviting us to see the world in a completely different way. And once that seeing begins to mature, fear itself begins to lose the ground upon which it has always stood. When we first hear the words, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form," the mind immediately tries to solve them as though they were a riddle. It wishes to arrive at an answer that can be remembered and repeated. But the Heart Sutra is not offering us another idea to collect. It is gently inviting us to look beyond the habit of dividing reality into separate pieces. We usually imagine that things first exist and only afterward become connected to other things. The Buddha invites us to see the opposite. Because everything is connected, nothing possesses an independent existence of its own. This is emptiness. Look again at the body sitting here. We often speak of my body as though it belonged to an isolated owner. Yet where does this body end and the world begin? Every breath reminds us that there is no clear boundary. Air becomes the body, and the body returns it to the world. The water within us once flowed through rivers and clouds. The warmth of this body comes from a sun millions of miles away. Even the bones that support us are formed from minerals that rested in the earth long before we were born. We call this collection of changing conditions my body. Yet if we search for a body existing independently from everything else, it cannot be found. This is why the Heart Sutra does not say that form disappears. It says that form is emptiness. The very fact that form exists only through causes and conditions is precisely what emptiness means. And then it immediately says, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not another hidden reality somewhere beyond the world. It is this very world seen without the illusion of separateness. The mountain remains a mountain. The river continues to flow. Birds still sing at dawn. Children still laugh. Tears still fall. Nothing is taken away. What disappears is only the mistaken belief that anything exists by itself alone. Imagine standing beside the ocean. A wave rises gracefully from the surface of the water. For a few moments, it seems to possess its own separate identity. We may even give it a name. Yet can the wave ever exist apart from the ocean? The wave has no existence independent of water. It is not something added to the ocean. It is simply the ocean appearing in a particular form for a little while. When the wave settles, nothing has been lost. Water remains water. The Buddha invites us to look at ourselves in the same way. We are like waves upon the vast ocean of causes and conditions. For a brief time, this particular life appears, carrying a certain name, a certain face, certain memories, and certain habits. These are precious. They deserve our care, but they are not separate from the whole. To mistake the wave for an independent thing is to create fear. Every wave fears returning to the ocean until it realizes it has never been anything other than water. Perhaps you have noticed how quickly the mind creates separation. Someone speaks kindly to us, and immediately there is my happiness. Someone criticizes us, and instantly there is my suffering. We divide the world into what supports the self and what threatens the self. From this division arise attachment, resentment, jealousy, pride, and fear. Yet before thought creates these divisions, experience itself is remarkably simple. There is hearing, there is feeling, there is seeing, there is knowing. Only afterward does the mind weave the story of me and mine. This is why mindfulness is so essential. Mindfulness is not merely paying attention. It is learning to observe experience before the mind covers it with countless judgments and identities. Suppose someone insults you. Ordinarily the words strike the ear, memory awakens, emotions surge, and before long a solid self has appeared that feels deeply wounded. But if mindfulness is present, something different becomes possible. First there is sound, then there is meaning, then sensations arise in the body, then thoughts begin to form, then the impulse to defend appears. By observing each condition as it arises, we begin to see that suffering is not a single solid object. It is a chain of dependent events. Because it is conditioned, it can be understood. Because it can be understood, it can be released. The Buddha compared this to seeing a magician perform an illusion. From a distance, the illusion appears completely real. We laugh, we gasp, we become amazed. Yet once we understand the trick, the appearance may continue, but its power to deceive is gone. In the same way, awakening does not make the world disappear. Praise and blame still come, gain and loss still visit us. Birth and death continue according to conditions. But the spell of ignorance begins to weaken. We no longer mistake passing appearances for permanent realities. Sometimes people imagine that emptiness means becoming emotionally distant, as though wisdom required us to stop loving those around us. The opposite is true. Consider what happens when you hold a flower. If you believe the flower belongs to you forever, fear quietly enters the heart. You begin worrying about the day it will fade. But if you understand its impermanent and interdependent nature, something beautiful happens. You cherish it more deeply. You appreciate every fragrance, every color, every delicate petal because you know it cannot be possessed. Wisdom does not diminish love. It frees love from grasping. The same is true of the people we care about. We often believe attachment and love are the same, yet they are very different. Attachment whispers, "Do not change, do not leave, continue making me feel secure." Compassion quietly says, "May you be free from suffering, whatever conditions life may bring." Attachment clings, compassion opens. Attachment fears loss. Compassion understands that all meetings are precious precisely because they are temporary. The Heart Sutra then speaks in words that have puzzled generations of readers. In emptiness there is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, and no mind. These words are not denying our senses. They are inviting us to look beyond appearances. The eye does not see by itself. It depends upon light, upon visible form, upon consciousness, upon countless biological conditions, and even upon the vast history of evolution that shaped it. Hearing depends upon vibration, air, ears, consciousness, and innumerable conditions beyond our awareness. Every sense exists only through relationship. Nothing stands alone. The sutra continues further. No ignorance, and also no ending of ignorance. No old age and death, and also no ending of old age and death. At first, this seems to contradict the Buddha's teachings. But look carefully. As long as we cling even to the path as a possession, subtle attachment remains. The teachings are like a finger pointing toward the moon. If we spend our lives holding onto the finger, we never actually see the moon. The Dharma exists to free us from clinging, not to become another object of clinging. Perhaps the most surprising words of all are these: there is no attainment and nothing to attain. The ordinary mind immediately protests. If there is nothing to attain, why meditate? Why practice generosity? Why cultivate wisdom? Yet notice how easily the spiritual path becomes another project for the self. We begin thinking, I will become enlightened, I will become pure, I will become awakened. The same self that once sought wealth or reputation now seeks enlightenment as another possession. The Buddha gently points beyond this. Enlightenment is not something added to us. It is not hidden in a distant future waiting to be acquired. It is the natural clarity that reveals itself when greed, hatred, and delusion gradually lose their hold. Imagine the sky on a cloudy day. The clouds do not create the sky, nor do they destroy it. They simply obscure it for a time. As the wind moves them away, nothing new has been added. The openness was always there. This is why meditation is not an effort to manufacture awakening. Meditation is the patient willingness to stop interfering. Sit quietly and watch the breath. Notice thoughts without chasing them. Notice feelings without resisting them. Notice sounds arriving and disappearing on their own. Little by little, we begin to trust awareness itself. We discover that awareness is spacious enough to hold joy without grasping it, and sorrow without being overwhelmed by it. There may come moments in meditation when the familiar boundaries begin to soften. The breath breathes, sounds simply arise. Thoughts float through awareness like leaves carried upon a gentle stream. There is seeing without a separate seer being found. There is hearing without a hearer standing apart from hearing. These moments should not be grasped or celebrated. If we become excited and think, now I have experienced emptiness, the self has quietly returned and claimed ownership of yet another passing experience. Simply smile gently and continue practicing. One of the great dangers on the path is becoming attached to understanding. The mind delights in collecting teachings. It enjoys saying, I understand dependent origination, I understand non-self, I understand emptiness. Yet if we observe carefully, we may discover that this new identity is simply the old self wearing the robes of wisdom. True understanding makes us humbler, not prouder. The more deeply we see, the less need we feel to convince anyone else that we have seen. The great bodhisattvas are admired not because they possess extraordinary knowledge, but because wisdom naturally blossoms into compassion. When the illusion of separateness begins to dissolve, another person's suffering no longer feels completely separate from our own. We do not help because we wish to become virtuous. We help because the boundary between self and other is no longer as rigid as it once seemed. Compassion ceases to be an effort. It becomes as natural as extending one hand to soothe the other when it has been injured. It is here that fear begins to loosen its grip. Much of our fear comes from believing that there is something fixed inside us that must be defended at all costs. We fear losing possessions. We fear losing status. We fear losing health. We fear losing those we love. Most deeply of all, we fear losing ourselves. But if we patiently continue this investigation, we begin to notice that what we call self has always been a flowing process rather than a fixed thing. Like a flame passed from one candle to another, there is continuity without permanence. Like music arising from many instruments playing together, life unfolds through relationship rather than isolation. Seeing this does not make us careless. It makes us extraordinarily tender. When we understand how fragile and interdependent every life is, kindness is no longer optional. It becomes the most natural response to existence itself, and it is from this tenderness that the deepest freedom begins to emerge. A freedom that is not separate from compassion, a freedom that neither clings to the changing world nor turns away from it, but embraces it completely with an open and fearless heart. I'd like to bring this journey to its natural completion. The final part draws together the Heart Sutra's teaching on emptiness, fearlessness, compassion, meditation, and daily practice, ending not with a summary, but with a contemplative invitation that leaves the listener in stillness. From this freedom, the way we meet ordinary life begins to change. The world itself has not become different. The same sunrise greets the morning. The same rain falls upon the earth. The same joys and sorrows continue to visit every human life. What changes is the heart that meets them. Before wisdom arose, we reached out to grasp every pleasant experience and pushed away everything unpleasant. We believed that happiness depended upon arranging the world according to our wishes. But little by little we begin to discover that suffering does not arise because life changes. Suffering arises because we ask what changes to remain unchanged. Think of someone standing in a river trying to stop the water from flowing. No matter how strong they may be, exhaustion is inevitable. The river has never promised to stand still. It is our demand that creates the struggle. In the same way, life has never promised permanence. Bodies grow older, seasons change, relationships evolve. Success gives way to failure, and failure often becomes the very condition from which wisdom grows. The awakened heart does not resist this movement. It learns to flow with it, just as the river flows effortlessly toward the sea. This is why the Buddha spoke so often of letting go. Sometimes people misunderstand these words and imagine that letting go means becoming indifferent or emotionally distant. But look carefully. When you hold a bird gently in your open hands, there is love without possession. When you close your hands tightly around it, the very thing you love begins to suffer. Letting go is not abandoning life. It is abandoning the habit of trying to own what can never truly be owned. Perhaps you have noticed that some of the happiest moments in your life arrived unexpectedly. A quiet conversation with a friend, the fragrance of rain upon dry earth, a child's laughter carried by the wind, a moment of complete silence before dawn. During those moments, the mind was not calculating, comparing, or grasping. There was simply direct participation in life itself. The separate self had grown quiet for a little while, and because of that, peace naturally appeared. This is not something reserved for monasteries or mountain caves. It is available in the midst of ordinary living. While washing a bowl, simply wash the bowl. Feel the warmth of the water. Notice the movement of the hands. Listen to the sound of the water without wishing it to be different. While drinking tea, simply drink tea. Before the mind begins planning tomorrow or remembering yesterday, there is only warmth, fragrance, taste, and awareness. These simple moments become gateways through which profound wisdom quietly enters everyday life. When someone speaks harshly to you, pause before answering. Feel the first sensations arising within the body. Notice how quickly the mind begins building a story. I have been insulted. I must defend myself. They should not have spoken this way. Do not condemn these thoughts. Simply observe them. Ask gently, what is actually here before the story begins? Again and again, return to direct experience. You may discover that what seemed like an enormous mountain of suffering is often built from thoughts that appeared only moments ago. Likewise, when praise comes, observe the mind with the same care. Notice the pleasant feeling. Notice the desire for it to continue. Notice how the mind begins constructing an identity around approval. Wisdom does not reject praise, nor does it cling to it. It receives both praise and blame as passing weather. The open sky is not harmed by dark clouds, nor does it become proud when the sun shines brightly. The Buddha often described the awakened mind as being like a great mountain. Storms may come, winds may blow fiercely, rain may fall without end. Yet the mountain remains unmoved because it does not struggle against the weather. This steadiness is not emotional numbness. It is the stability that arises when we stop building our identity upon experiences that cannot remain. As our understanding matures, compassion also becomes more spacious. At first, we may feel compassion only toward those we love. Then gradually it extends to strangers. Eventually, with continued practice, even those who have caused us pain begin to be included. This does not mean approving harmful actions. It means recognizing that unwholesome actions arise from confusion, fear, craving, and ignorance. A person consumed by hatred is already suffering deeply, even if they cannot yet see it. Understanding this softens the heart without weakening wisdom. The Bodhisattva path grows naturally from this realization. When the illusion of separation begins to dissolve, serving others no longer feels like a sacrifice. Helping another person becomes as natural as removing a thorn from your own foot. There is no calculation, no secret desire for recognition, no quiet thought that says, I am becoming a good person. There is simply a compassionate response arising because wisdom has revealed the deep interconnectedness of all life. This is why the Heart Sutra tells us that the Bodhisattva, relying upon the perfection of wisdom, dwells with a mind free from hindrances. Because there are no hindrances, there is no fear. These words deserve our deepest contemplation. Notice that fear is not conquered through force. The sutra does not say that the Bodhisattva suppresses fear or fights against it. Fear falls away because its foundation has disappeared. If there is no fixed self to defend, what remains for fear to protect? This does not mean that the body will never respond to danger. If a snake appears on the path, the body wisely steps aside. But the endless psychological fear created by clinging to an imagined permanent self begins to dissolve. For many people, the deepest fear is the fear of death. We do not merely fear pain, we fear the disappearance of the one we believe ourselves to be. Yet reflect carefully upon your own life. The child you once were has already disappeared. The young adult has disappeared. Countless versions of yourself have arisen and passed away. Every day, thoughts die, emotions die, memories fade. Cells are born and perish without number. Life has always been a dance of arising and passing away. Death is not an interruption of this movement. It is part of the same great unfolding that has been present from the very beginning. This understanding does not remove the sadness of parting. When someone we love dies, tears may still come. Grief is not a mistake. The Buddha himself showed tenderness and compassion in the face of suffering. Wisdom does not harden the heart. It allows the heart to break open rather than break apart. Beneath the sorrow there is also gratitude. Gratitude that these lives met at all. Gratitude that love was possible. Gratitude that even what is brief can be immeasurably beautiful. As practice continues, we begin to trust awareness itself. Thoughts still arise, but they are no longer believed so quickly. Emotions still visit, but they no longer define us. Pleasant experiences come and go. Unpleasant experiences come and go. Awareness remains open, receiving each moment without needing to cling or resist. Like a clear mirror, it reflects everything, yet holds on to nothing. The mirror does not choose which face to reflect. It welcomes each appearance equally and is never stained by what passes before it. This is why the Buddha placed such great emphasis upon mindfulness. Mindfulness is not merely a technique for reducing stress. It is the steady light that reveals the true nature of experience. Every moment of careful observation weakens ignorance a little more. Every moment of non-grasping strengthens wisdom a little more. Every act of kindness nourishes the awakening of the heart. Do not imagine that this realization belongs only to great masters or ancient saints. Every step taken with awareness is already part of the path. Every moment in which anger is understood instead of blindly followed is already an expression of wisdom. Every time compassion is chosen instead of resentment, the Heart Sutra is being lived rather than merely recited. So as you leave this teaching and return to the ordinary rhythm of your life, do not feel that you are leaving the Dharma behind. The next breath is the Dharma. The next conversation is the Dharma. The next difficulty is the Dharma. The next moment of joy is the Dharma. Every circumstance invites the same quiet investigation. When happiness comes, ask gently, "Can I enjoy this without clinging?" When sorrow comes, ask gently, "Can I allow this without calling it mine?" When anger appears, ask, "What conditions have gathered to create this moment?" When fear arises, ask, "What is it that I believe must be protected?" Do not hurry to answer these questions with words. Let them accompany you like trusted friends. Carry them into meditation. Carry them into your work. Carry them into your relationships. Allow them to soften the certainty with which the mind has always grasped its own stories. Perhaps one evening, while sitting quietly as the day comes to an end, you will notice the breath moving effortlessly. Thoughts will rise and fall without disturbance. Sounds will come and go like echoes in a distant valley. For a brief moment there may be no struggle to become someone, no need to hold on to anything, no fear of losing what cannot truly be possessed. There will simply be this living moment, complete in itself. Do not think, "I have found emptiness." Do not think, "I have become awakened." Simply remain present. Like the moon reflected upon a still lake, wisdom appears most clearly when the waters of the mind are undisturbed. This is the heart of the Heart Sutra. Form is not separate from emptiness, and emptiness is not separate from form. Samsara is not transformed by escaping the world, but by seeing the world clearly. The path is not about becoming someone new. It is about gently releasing the countless misunderstandings that have hidden your true nature from your own eyes. May this wisdom become more than beautiful words. May it become the way you breathe, the way you listen, the way you speak, the way you walk upon this earth. May every insight give rise to greater humility. May every moment of understanding deepen compassion. May every act of compassion reveal still deeper wisdom. And may your own practice become a source of peace not only for yourself, but for everyone whose life you touch. Let us carry this contemplation into silence, for there are truths that words can only approach, never contain. In that silence, the Heart Sutra continues to speak. In that silence, nothing is lacking. In that silence, the heart is already free.